At the time of the last election, the Ontario Liberal Party had been in power for 15 years, from 2003 to 2018, and in that time they had managed to rack up so much provincial debt, $325 billion to be exact, and had increased that debt from the time that they started by 134%. They were actually spending $40 million more every day than they were bringing in. Ontarians wanted this reckless spending to end so badly that back in 2018 in the election, they booted the Liberals out, gave them 7 seats, which is effectively robbing them of party status in the province. Ontarians wanted less spending, but as it turns out, it's a lot harder to save than it is to spend. And if Doug Ford's government makes too many mistakes, Ontarians could be stuck with another big spending government for 15 years. We can't afford that. We need the government to save. So, where can Doug Ford find these savings? We've got 3 ideas. Idea number 1, public sector salaries. About half of all provincial spending every year, which is $72 billion annually, goes into public sector salaries. A 2018 Fraser Institute report showed that in addition to receiving better salaries, which is about an 11% premium on what their private sector counterparts make, people working for government also get better pensions, earlier retirement, and better benefits. Bringing public sector wages in line with those in the private sector would eliminate about $8 billion off of provincial spending every year, which would go a long way toward eliminating the almost $12 billion deficit that we're going to run this year in the province. Government union bosses might put up a big fight, but I doubt that the electorate's going to feel too bad for them. Next is corporate welfare. Now, this one should be obvious for a premier who repeatedly says that the government doesn't create jobs, that they create the environment for job creators to create jobs. And if this government's wondering how Ontarians feel about corporate welfare, they need look no further than the example of the federal Liberal minister Catherine McKenna giving $12 million to Loblaws, a very profitable company, to buy new freezers. They don't like it. But ultimately, a government that's for the people should be the staunchest critic of corporate welfare. The government giving our tax dollars over to profitable corporations isn't even justifiable as a job creation strategy. We saw that after Doug Ford gave $35 million to Maple Leaf Foods, they turned around and laid 300 people off. So instead of bickering with the federal Liberals about who's to blame for the Bombardier layoffs in Thunder Bay, perhaps the Premier could have pointed out that it's wrong for the Bombardier company to have received close to $4 billion in taxpayer handouts over the past 5 decades, when in reality the Bombardier family is one of the wealthiest in Canada, with a net worth of close to $3 billion. It's hard to imagine the Bombardier family getting much sympathy from Ontario taxpayers if we were to turn off the taps, but hey, they're welcome to come to Queen's Park with picket signs if they want. Last but not least is municipal money wasters, and there's a certain mayor who comes to mind. Well, earlier this year, the City of Toronto did something very bizarre. They could have saved $48 million, not by a cut, but simply by opening construction contract bidding to non-unionized workers. Seems like a slam dunk. You'd be surprised. The city, 19 councillors in fact, including the mayor, voted against this provincial competitiveness legislation that would have saved the city oodles of cash. In fact, even the city manager recommended that they vote for this, but they went against his recommendation and did not decide to open up construction bidding. Instead, these supposedly cash-strapped city councillors decided to stick with a group of 9 unions, and so we're probably going to see a lot more of these crazy contracts, like the pencil sharpener at the TDSB that cost $150 for a contractor to screw in 4 screws. Or what about the gate at an Etobicoke Park that was quoted to cost $150,000 to install, but instead a local maverick hired a homeless guy and they both built it for under $600. The worst part about all of this is that John Tory actively campaigned and cried foul when Doug Ford said, "We need you to find a little bit of savings because the province is in trouble." Councillor Joe Cressy said that people would die if $33 million was taken from the city's public health budget. Yet, when the city had an obvious example in front of them to save $48 million simply by opening construction contract bidding, they said no. How hard would it be to open up construction contract bidding to non-unionized workers? Apparently not very hard, because every other city and municipality in this province does it. So to conclude, taxpayers want Ford to save money, but if he cuts in the wrong places, the electorate might not send him back for another term. Our recommendation: bloated bureaucracies, corporate welfare checks, and municipal money wasters should be first on the chopping block.